Salas voted with a radical environmentalist to increase the price of gas 73 cents a gallon, hurting families, costing us more. We can't afford Rudy Salas.
I was the only Assembly Democrat to vote no on raising the gas tax. I'm Rudy Salas, and I approve this message because I always honor those who grow our food and produce our gas.
Well, you might have noticed this week the new ads. Assemblyman Rudy Salas and Congressman David Valdao and their respective party PACs flooding the TV airwaves with a flurry of attack ads, the market cashing in millions just on this race alone. So let the countdown to the midterm begin as the legislative session is officially in the books. We want to say hello to our statewide political journalist this week. Laura Cordy covers state politics for Politico and is a co-author of Politico California Playbook, and Dan Walters, political columnist for Cal Matters, whose newspaper career spans some 60 years. Welcome to you both here. So, all right, guys, midterm races, Congressional District 22, Salas versus Valdao. Who's winning the attack ad battle to this point? Dan, I'll start with you.
Well, I don't know that we can say that anybody's winning anything at this point. You know, we're still a couple of months away from the election, and all these close races in California, these close congressional races, and there's maybe a half dozen of them that are on the docket. They're all going to depend on turnout. What's the turnout going to be in a non-presidential year where there's no top of the ticket battles for governor or senator or anything? This is the real unknown but very important factor in the outcome of all these contested congressional races in California this year. And of course, it's obvious that what happens in California this year could tip the balance of power in the House of Representatives. Republicans need pick up 5 seats, take control. Looked like a sure thing a few weeks ago. Now it's not such a sure thing, according to most recent polls. So yes, these races and the others in California, particularly in Southern California, could have a decisive impact on who controls Congress for the next 2 years at least.
And Laura, I want to get to you. Obviously, Rudy Salas was endorsed by T.J. Cox. We all know that he has issues with the DOJ at this point, indicted on 28 different charges by the FBI. And I'm wondering, how much does Rudy Salas really need to denounce that endorsement and then also pick up an endorsement in the name of Governor Newsom?
Yeah, the TJ Cox question is interesting. Shortly after those allegations came out from the federal authorities, Rudy Salas essentially turned around and rejected that endorsement, which I think most political consultants say was the wise thing to do. It's really not a great idea to tie yourself to somebody who's involved in such an expansive corruption case. As far as picking up an endorsement from Gavin Newsom, we'll have to see. I don't know if that's critical necessarily in the Central Valley, which doesn't tend to be as Democratic as some areas. Of course, this district is leaning a little bit more Democratic, but Salas has also been really conscious about making sure that voters know that he's worker friendly. I mean, we just heard the ad that he released this week talking about how he values people who produce the food and the oil and the gas in his district, and that needing to kind of speak to those voters has kind of led him to taking some no votes on important climate legislation in recent years. And that's been a big focus of Gavin Newsom's lately. Maybe that's not a deal breaker for Newsom when it comes to endorsing a congressional candidate. At the end of the day, getting Democrats in Congress is really critical for the entire party, but that might be a little bit of a sticking point.
Guys, I want to move on to the legislative session. It ended with such chaos, hundreds of bills on the governor's desk at this point. He's starting to sign them. I want to know, Dan, I'll start with you. What stood out the most to you as it all ended and it played out the last second of the deadline? Also, the climate change bills, big talker in Sacramento. What do you make of how it all played out once it was all said and done?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're breaking up a little bit, so I didn't know you were talking to me. Well, I don't know there was any more chaos at the end of this session than there usually is. Probably a little bit less. We've seen some more chaotic sessions than this one. There was a last-minute flurry of legislation because the governor wanted some environmental bills, some climate change bills, and he got, I think, basically all but one. Wasn't quite sure he really wanted that one. Anyway, are they important? I suppose they are if they really have the kind of long-term effect that he assumes that they will have, but we really won't know the outcome of these things until he's out of the governorship. It's one thing to legislate saying we're going to have, say, 100% renewable electric energy by 2045, but it's another thing to actually make that happen. We just saw this week how really kind of precarious California's power situation is. When we set a record on Tuesday for power demand, 52,000 megawatts, renewables were only accounting for about a quarter of that. Half of that energy was coming from natural gas-fired generators. So we're saying that over the next 13 years, by 2035, those will be mostly eliminated. We're supposed to be 90% renewable by 2035, only 13 years from now. And the renewables are only now maybe a quarter of what we need on a hot day like that. It's one thing to legislate it. It's another thing to make it happen.
Dan, and Laura, I want to come to you now because we did see maybe some bizarre radio silence. Both of you cover the governor on a daily basis. It was kind of radio silence there when you guys asked to talk to him, but he had that impromptu press conference in Los Angeles during this unprecedented heat wave. And then we saw him in a weird social media video message where he was wearing a sweater or some kind of fleece. What do you make of that as you guys cover him every single day, and then it didn't seem like you can get a hold of him?
You know, it's hard to know exactly what the governor is thinking, but as you said, there was this emergency going on, and he was delivering messages via social media. These were pre-recorded messages, so there's not a press corps in person that can ask him questions. We like to ask him difficult questions sometimes, and that was noted on the day of the peak heat emergency. And his office said at the time, told another reporter, he's too busy handling the emergency response to hold a media conference. And the next day, we still had flex alerts going on. It wasn't the hottest day of the heat emergency, but there was still an emergency response happening. And then we hear that Governor Newsom is actually in Beverly Hills. He's speaking to a code conference, which is essentially a gathering of tech executives and tech influencers. It's sponsored by Vox Media. And he was apparently offering an address there. He did a short gaggle with reporters. But that was, there were some questions raised about why he wasn't answering reporters' questions, where he was, handling this response from, that, raised some eyebrows.
All right, real quick, Dan, I got about 10 seconds. Finish it up for us real quick. Your thoughts.
Well, this is a governor who now is trying to make a national name for himself. Whether he's running for president or not, he's still trying to make a national name for himself and probably be one of those in the mix should the lightning strike. I don't think he wants to take any chance of something being said on camera by a snarky reporter's question that would reverberate nationally and wind up on CNN, MSN, all these places. And the best way to avoid doing that is just not do it, not to put yourself in that position, and particularly on an issue as touchy as blackouts or the potential of blackouts, because no matter what he said, if we had blackouts, he's the one that's going to take the political heat for it.
All right,
and it's just probably smart politics not to get involved.
Dan and Laura, I got to cut it there as our time goes quick here. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit more of that statewide insight. Appreciate you guys so much. All right.